Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start this lesson off by giving all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are still fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith. And Shalom to all the sincere believers, which includes the scattered Israelites who are amongst these other nations and look like these other nations. Now, this lesson is going to be based on this article in regards to the Cuban president promising impregnable resistance to any U.S. attempt to control the island. Because right now, those people out there in Cuba, a lot of people are starving out there. Their electrical grid is down. Like, they're really going through it out there. And those so-called Cubans are Israelites. Or, a good portion of them are Israelites. And they're actually from the tribe of Manasseh, the northern kingdom. Because there's the southern kingdom Israelites, and then there's the northern kingdom. And these Manasserites, or these Manassites, who, are called Cubans in this, day and age, those are Israelites. And, they're really going through it right now. And Trump is over there talking about, that he's planning on taking control of their island. He's planning on taking control of Cuba. And the Cuban president is basically telling him, that's not going to happen. Because this is what Esau does. The so-called white man. This is what he does. He wants to take over the world. He wants to have control over everything. Trump is over here talking about taking over Cuba, Venezuela, Mexico, Greenland. He's even threatened to take over Canada. That's Esau's nature, just a colonizer, just taking lands that don't belong to him. He pretends that he's going to help the people and save the people. They're struggling out there. They're suffering out there. And, the white man with his superiority, is going to come in and save everybody. And it's like, that's never how things play out. Because anybody in their right mind knows that Esau never has people's best intentions at heart. So through the Spirit, I'm going to read this article, get some precepts, and Lord's will, you're edified. It says, any attempt by the United States to take control of Cuba would be met with impregnable resistance, Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel said Tuesday as power returned to some parts of the island following a nationwide grid collapse. Hang on. Slovakia had to turn up the brightness. It says successive U.S. administrators have sought to isolate Cuba for more than 6 decades, Diaz-Canel said in a defiant ex-post accusing Washington of now using economic weakness as an outrageous pretext to seize it. He said only in this way can the fierce economic war be explained, which is applied as collective punishment against the entire people, he said. In the face of the worst scenario, Cuba is accompanied by a certainty. Any external aggressor will clash with an impregnable resistance. It says U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly taunted Cuba's communist leadership with threats of a takeover, after suggesting on Monday that he could do anything he wants with the island. Trump said Tuesday, "We'll be doing something with Cuba very soon." And this is Esau. This is Esau in his truest, purest form. He really has that I can do whatever I want spirit on him. He really thinks that he can just run up in anybody's country and just do whatever he wants. And they tried that, or they're currently trying that with Iran. And we see how that's going for them. Says Secretary of State Marco Rubio followed up with a blunt assessment from the Oval Office. Said Cuba needs new people in charge, Rubio said Tuesday. Their economy doesn't work, they're in a lot of trouble, and the people in charge, they don't know how to fix it, so they have to get new people in charge. And the thing is, though, the fact that Esau thinks that he's the perfect person when all the countries that Esau controls, UK, the US, Canada, Germany, France, Italy, so on and so forth, these are all, for lack of a better term, shit shows. Like everything is falling apart in their own country, but yet they're talking about, what people need to fix in their country. It says Cuba has taken a severe economic hit since the U.S. effectively blocked its oil supply earlier this year, depriving its aging electricity network of its main source of fuel. So this is how the U.S. gets down, The U.S. creates a problem, and then they'll turn around and quote unquote fix the problem. And then pretend like they're the good guys, like, oh, look, see, we helped you. And it's like, no, you caused the problem in the first place. Once again, the U.S. is the bad guy. It says most of the island's 10 million people were without power on Monday as the first nationwide grid collapse forced residents to cook with gas by torch and candlelight. School hours were shortened and major sporting events postponed as rubbish piled up in some neighborhoods due to a lack of fuel for dump trucks. It says by Tuesday afternoon, power had returned to roughly 55% of customers in the capital Havana and some places in the western and central eastern regions of the island. Said the outages have compounded increasingly difficult living conditions for Cubans who for months have endured sporadic power cuts. Says uncertainty over any move by the U.S. to make good on its threats is adding to the anger and anxiety. But Havana resident Marianela Alvarez told Reuters that Cubans don't want war. Said we as people, as civilians, aren't prepared for a war, she said. I want Trump to understand, to leave us alone. Says Havana resident Luis Enrique Garcia told the news agency that he fears for his country, but held out hope for talks. Said I truly believe that there will be dialogue and understanding, because it is love that should unite human beings, not war. Says, however, not everyone was so sure. Says, I don't trust a dialogue with Trump, Havana local Ahmed Ineke told Reuters. Says, I don't trust Trump as a person, even with the little I know about him. And so that's something that doesn't really give me hope. And this person seems to have common sense. They don't trust him. And the scriptures say, never trust thine enemy. And the so-called white man, these Edomites, are the number one enemy of all of Israel. The southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. Says Diaz-Canel confirmed Friday that Cuban officials had held talks with the U.S. to identify the bilateral problems that need a solution. Trump had previously said that Washington was holding talks with Cuba, but it was the first confirmation from Havana. Yeah, so basically, Esau being Esau, wanting to take over somebody else's country, be the typical colonizer that we all know Esau to be. And these the Cuban people, these Manasserites or Manassites, they're saying, hey, first of all, we don't want a war, because they know they can't handle a war with America. That's not a war that they would win. They know that. But at the same time, it's also like, why does it need to go that far? But it's because, as I've, the scripture that I've hit so many times recently, Exodus 15:3, the Lord Yahweh is a man of war. The Lord Yahweh is his name. And in Ecclesiastes 3:1, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. And then you jump down to verse 8, and it says a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. And we're in a time of war. And that's why the Lord basically has put the spirit on Esau, especially here in the U.S. He's put the spirit on these Edomites to want war, because that's the time and season that we are in. And a lot of these Cuban people, these Manasseh, they don't understand that. They don't understand that this is Esau being Esau. This is the so-called white man being who he has always been, a violent, warmongering colonizer who pretends that he wants to help you, but in reality, he wants to conquer you. Ecclesiasticus 12:10. Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Verse 11. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him, and thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust hath not been altogether wiped away. And that's right. So even though Esau is talking, Trump is just flat out threatening them. But Marco Rubio was like, they have all these problems out there in Cuba, and their leadership doesn't know how to fix it. So, we're the best ones to, basically help them. They need new people in charge. And that's the problem with Esau. Esau thinks, the so-called white man thinks that he's the best person to be in charge. Even though here in America, America's a complete shit show, dumpster fire. Everything is falling apart here. Things are falling apart in Canada, in the UK, France, Italy, Germany. Basically anywhere where these Edomites are in charge, everything is falling apart. They can't even take care of their own country, but they want to talk about how, they are the best people to control another country. But that's that whole Edomite supremacy BS. These Edomites think that they're so much better than everybody. That whole white supremacy nonsense. Everywhere these Edomites go, everything falls apart. Everywhere these Edomites go, the people who are already dealing with a bad situation end up having to deal with much worse. Because like I said, Esau does not care about the people. He does not have the people's best interest at heart. He wants to conquer the people. He wants to enslave and oppress the people. He does not care about making your life better. Because Esau understands that Israelites are his enemy. So he treats you as such. It's our people, 2/3 of our people, who don't understand that. It says 2 Timothy 3:1. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. And when you look up the definition of perilous, it means full of danger or risk. And we are in some dangerous times, man. You see these wars popping off. Esau's on his colonizing war path. He's trying to help Israel take over Iran. Trump is over here talking about taking over Cuba and Venezuela and Mexico and Greenland and even Canada. Like the devil horns are really starting to show. And as the days go by, the Lord is just going to embolden that spirit within Esau. And Esau is just going to act out more and more. And you see the men of the Lord, starting of course with the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, have been warning people for decades that we were going to get to this point. Where the Lord was just going to let Esau really show his devil horns, show his true intentions, show who he really is. Like at this point, Esau can't hide and pretend like he cares about anybody. Like Esau doesn't care about his own people. He'll send his own people to die and go get blown up in these pathetic wars that he starts. So he doesn't care. Esau doesn't care about other Edomites. So if he doesn't care about his own people, why would he care about his enemies, which Israelites are? So-called blacks and Hispanics and Native Americans are Esau's enemies. We've been that way from the womb. Jacob and Esau. So we're not to trust Esau. He doesn't care about us. He wants to destroy us. That's always been his mindset. And that one person in the article that I read that said that they don't trust him, that they do not trust Trump, that was about the smartest person there, Because to an extent, they understand that he's not to be trusted, that the so-called white man is not to be trusted. Hebrews 10:30, for we know him that have said, vengeance belongeth unto me. I will recompense, saith the Lord. And again, the Lord shall judge his people. And that's exactly what the Lord is doing. That's why the Israelites, who primarily make up the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, why we're in the position that we're in, why we're at the bottom, why everybody is against us, why we're the most downtrodden people. Because we are the Lord's chosen people. See, the Lord loves us. Ultimately, he loves us above all other nations. But we angered the Lord. We went off. We started following the ways of the heathens instead of following the ways of the Lord. So us being in these horrible positions that we're in, the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, that's our own doing. That's our punishment. That's the Lord judging us. And those Cubans out there, those Manassites out there, or Manasserites, I'm not really sure how to say it. Those are also the Lord's people. They're of the northern kingdom. And the Lord is punishing them. That's why those people are starving. That's why, their electrical grid goes out sporadically. That's why there's so much chaos over there in the land of Cuba. Because the Lord is judging his people. Just like with Mexico, just like the Dominican Republic, just like with Venezuela, just like with Puerto Rico. All of those are the Lord's people. And he's judging them. He's bringing judgment upon them. Whether it's, civil unrest, whether it's storms and tempests, whether it's starvation, whether it's power outages, whatever it is, that's the Lord bringing judgment upon his people. because they're angering him with their wickedness. And 2/3 of the Lord's people, they're not going to get right on this side, so they're going to have to die. But in the kingdom, they're going to get brought back, and then they're going to be put in their right state of mind. The Lord is going to make them perfect, and they're never going to go off again, which means they're never going to have to suffer again. And that's what we have to focus on. We have to acknowledge the fact that the reason why our people are going through what we're going through is as a result of our own wicked actions. We angered the Lord. We provoked the Lord unto wrath. And now we're suffering the consequences of it. But that suffering is almost up. We have a few more prophecies that have to come to pass, and then we're up out of here. Chiefly, the mark of the beast being implemented, that MOTB, that charagma being implemented, and then World War III. The nuclear war, the war to end all wars. Those are two of the main prophecies that still have to come to pass. And after that, then we're in the kingdom. Then our people are restored back to our royal status. Then we're made perfect, and we'll never go off again, and we'll never be oppressed again. So the whole point of this lesson really is that even though those people out there in Cuba are Israelites and they are our people, and seeing them suffering, it is sad. We have to understand that the reason why they're going through that is because the Lord is punishing them. He's judging them for being wicked. It's not, them going through that just for no reason. Us as Israelites, we brought this upon ourselves, and we have to acknowledge that. We have to accept that, and you have to turn from your wicked ways and start following the Lord. But 2/3 are not going to do that. That's why 2/3 are going to die on this side. They're going to suffer, and they're going to die. Majority of those people out there are more than likely going to die. And there's some of them that will be saved. But the majority have to go because they're wicked. But they'll be cool in the kingdom when we get to that point. And we're not there yet. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. In closing, I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash, the Wadi Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, for putting the spirit on me to do this lesson. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to our brothers who are fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith. And shalom to all the sincere believers, which once again includes the scattered Israelites who are amongst these other nations and may look like these other nations. I hope you all stay strong, stay safe, stay fervent, stay circumspect, stay prayed up. Adawan Ratazah. Till next time, Shalom.